Okay. After reporting your incidents in CalPads, the next file that you are required to submit is the student absenteeism file. It helps us track students who are chronically absent. So any student who is absent more than 10 days or 10% of the total enrollment days are considered chronically absent. This includes any kind of absences. It could be excused absences, unexcused absences, and absences based on due to suspensions, either in school or out of school suspensions. So any form of absence during the enrollment period will be counted against the chronic absenteeism rate. So the goal of submitting the STAS is not to collect. That's a different reporting process. However, the same data derived from your attendance is used to determine who are your chronic absentee students, right? You basically determine who have absences during the year. So the goal of collecting or reporting chronic absenteeism is not to penalize students, but more to encourage them to be in attendance at school, because any kind of attendance in school, any presence in school is a win for a student, right? So that's the reason why we encourage students or we track chronic absenteeism. So what are the reporting basics for STAS? Again, since this is end of year, any student who was enrolled at your district, even just a day of enrollment during the period, is expected to have a STAS record. And it should, and anyone with a 10 or 30 type of enrollment from KN to 12, and that includes TK students because they have a kindergarten level grade level in CalPAD. So anyone who is primary or short-term enrolled and who are in grades KN to 12 in the current academic year are expected to have a STAS record submitted. However, there are students who may be exempt in collecting absence information, but that doesn't mean that you don't submit a STAS record for them. What you do is submit a STAS record with a Y exempt indicator in the exempt indicator field. That then tells us that the student is exempt due to any of the following scenarios. Number one, the student is enrolled at an NPS school. The student is in a home and hospital setting majority of the year. Okay. So if the student is in a home and hospital setting, then you may mark them as an exempted from STAS. Third one is any student who just come back for a one-day enrollment just to annotate their graduation. So let's say the student had to complete some credits during summer and then had to get their diploma after. So to annotate that they graduated and completed high school, then you have to enroll them with a one-day enrollment, and that should then allow you to exit them with an E23100. However, in terms of the STAS reporting, you still have to account for that one day and just use a Y exam indicator. And then the last one are your students who are still enrolled in high school but are attending solely college classes. So they are at the community college or just strictly attending college classes. So you don't have a way to track their attendance. So in these scenarios, in your STAS file, you just mark them as a Y, and then all other fields can be marked 0. And then there are enrollments that are on a different type of learning, like you have independent study or project-based or coursework. There is a way to quantify the work that they do. You can go to the CalPADS FAQ and just type STAS. And in the FAQ, you should be able to see this way of computing attendance based on daily attendance, coursework, and hourly attendance. Okay, so let's just copy this and post it here. So within the STAS file, here are the major fields or values that we look for. Number one, we will determine if a student is exempt from STAS reporting. Therefore, we don't have to calculate the student's absenteeism. Then, of course, you have the attendance fields. And then we also want to know if the student was absent because of in-school and out-of-school suspension. And just to go back to Nate's point, there is a validation that will trigger if you claim a STAS in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension. However, there is no incident record reported for the student. So you can't claim an in-school or out-of-school suspension without an incident. So make sure that you count those in STAS and also report the proper incidents for that. So in-school suspension is counted in the attendance days bucket. So as much as this is a suspension, the student is still in school and still getting some instruction, right? So in the calculations of CalPads, it is still considered as an attendance. Now, out of school suspension days are added in the actual absences, okay? Because the student is out of school, obviously, and is not being instructed. Or you probably would provide them instructional or homework during their suspensions, and there is an indicator that will help us determine if you did so or not. And then, of course, there are instances where the schools or the district is in an emergency or disaster situation, right? So last year, in December, in March, there are many school districts located in the Sierras, either the Northern Sierras or even in the San Bernardino County area, who were snowed in. And so it impacted attendance. So these school districts can ask for a waiver from the state to shorten their expected days of attendance. That way, those absences due to snowed in days will not be counted against you guys or even against the student. So you can shorten your expected attendance days based on an approved waiver from the state. Okay. And so with that, of course, your attendance days will be shorter, and then you don't have to account for those absences based on disasters. And then there are two other fields that are also part of STAS. You have your non-ADA generating independent study days and ADA generating independent study days. So obviously, it's self-explanatory. So these the non-ADA ones are total number of days the student did not satisfy statutory and regulatory requirements necessary to generate a day of attendance for either traditional or course-based independent study. Then ADA is the total number of days that satisfies statutory and regulatory requirements based on course or independent study. So the buckets for this, so based on the different absences, those absences are put into different buckets. You have your days in school suspension, which it's an attended days bucket. You have your out of school suspension, days absent due to unexcused. You have your days absent excused and non-ADA independent days. So all of these are part of the absent category. Now, the days present are your days attended, of course, and then the days in school suspension. Okay. So based on this, CalPAS will calculate your absence rate based on the total number of days enrolled, based on the total number of expected attendance days. So that's how to collect STAS. I believe so. We may have to research on that. I'm not sure though, but maybe my colleagues could be able to check if that's the actual waiver. But there is a waiver that you could apply for. That way it shortens your expected days and it doesn't impact your absence days for your entire district. Okay, so again, for STAS, you only have to submit a STAS record for any absence that is 1 day or more. Okay, because any increment lower than 1 day will not be accepted. Also, you also have to, if majority of the day the student was absent, then you report that 1 day of suspension.